I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and we are going to break down the Cincinnati Bengals 2023 season and also preview their 2024 offseason and some picks and free agents that we feel they need to resign. They had a very up and down 2023 season, and so we're going to break into that. But before we do that, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified whenever we create new content. Ryan and I, we have a bunch of content coming out, including 3 round and 7 round mock drafts as we progress up to the NFL draft. That includes the Cincinnati Bengals as well. So be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Ryan, if you want to pull up these slides here, Bengals ended up going 9-8. They had Joe Burrow, who started the season off with a calf strain and started to get better. But as he started to get better, when they really unfortunately started to, uh, um, well, that's when he tore a
Tore the
ligament.
ligament in his wrist, yeah.
I knew he had to have surgery. So Jake Browning came in and did the best he could, and I think he has to be with the Bengals next year. I have to go back and look at this contract. I'm trying to remember from the just what I was reading at the time. But I do believe though that he potentially worked his way up to be like if there's a team that needs a stopgap kind of guy, potentially just try him out. He might have worked his way into potentially a starting role at some point here, especially as a backup as of Joe Burrow. So, but looking at the stats here though, these are team offensive stats, so some of the passing stats might be included as well in the or into the sacks. So they're average overall in passing game. That's kind of what I expected, considering how slow that they started. Then also at the same time with the injury to Joe Burrow, and Jake Browning trying to get loose as well. But the running game, I think, is the area where they really need to improve on. And Ryan, like, kind of, what are your overall thoughts when you see that? Do you think it's the offensive line? Do you think it was just overall offensive scheming, relying on the pass too much?
I do think it was, the offensive line. I actually am surprised to see them at 31st. I felt that their run game was definitely better, as the season, progressed, but I think we kinda saw a similar thing this year with the addition of Orlando Brown Jr. This offensive line took a few games to kinda develop and turn into, a serviceable offensive line, but then I think by the time that it really was starting to click was when Joe Burrow went down. And that to me just kind of allowed teams to play a little bit more aggressive on the defensive side of the ball. And I think the Minnesota Vikings game was a really good example because when they were playing a normal offense and weren't like being aggressive and taking shots down the field, defenses were really able to pin their ears back like the Vikings were in that game and get after Jake Browning and really kind of like slow down this run game and keep everything at the line of scrimmage. But then we saw T. Higgins had a monster game once when they started to throw the ball down the field just because they were taking advantage of a weaker secondary, and T. Higgins just started making plays simply. And that to me, I think, was at the end of the year, Jake Browning, while he was playing well, teams were able to kind of get after him and slow things down and keep the game keep the game at the line of scrimmage. I would love to see this improve next year, especially Joe Mixon. He's a great running back for them. He's getting towards the end of his career. I believe he's 28. Um,
Hmm.
and so we all know that the age of 30 for running backs is really like when guys really start to take a big dip there. The other thing too, especially after the big investment in Orlando Brown, that was surprising to me was the fact that they gave up 50 sacks this year. Part of that is just the fact that Jake Browning was holding onto the ball longer than Joe Burrow, and over the last few years, I really think Joe Burrow has been one of the more hit quarterbacks in the NFL. I know his first 2 seasons, especially that offensive line was not good. Um, so that'll be interesting to kind of keep an eye on if they can get this pass protection better. And then they actually did protect the ball pretty well. They only gave up 16 total turnovers on the year with a plus 10 turnover split. Through the year, giving up only 16, but having 26 takeaways. So on the defensive side of the ball, again, a little lackluster. We saw the drop off coming, I think, in the passing game. But what was really surprising was that this run defense fell to where it was, being 26th in the NFL. They've had a top 5 run defense the previous 3 seasons, and it was really interesting, kind of seeing it fall to this point. Just
Hmm.
Oh, excuse me. Just seeing it fall to 26th, I think was really, really surprising given the few amount of turnovers or changes that they made at those key positions. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, defensively as well, they did lose Jesse Bates and then Von Bell as well. They only kept
yeah,
Jermaine Pat. So having that younger secondary, but then I think uh, I think they have one of the better defensive lines, in my opinion, in the league. They did suffer some injuries down the stretch, like with DJ Reader, who we're about to speak to
yeah,
here in a second. So, in general, uh, it's almost kind of like you talk about the Patriots way. It's like it's the Bengals way. It's like it takes them the month of September and early part of October, kind of leading up to maybe even into the middle of November, to like really get started. And then from there, though, that second half of the season, like from what we've seen, like that's where they really pick up. And yeah, I wouldn't say that's probably the best way to start a season, but I think that's also how some of these numbers can be influenced just a little bit here. So, uh, not the season that they wanted, but also too they did have a bunch of injuries as well. So, moving on now to free agency, they do have a bunch of cap space. That 69.8 million that was as of about I believe January 11th. Sitting now, we're recording this on January 19th. Let me just double check here. So Bengals still sit at 69.8. So free agent wise, some of the top ones, obviously T. Higgins is going to be a big one here. Tyler Boyd is also a free agent as well, and also included Irv Smith and Drew Sample as well. They're tight end. So four pass catchers right there. DJ Reader, another one as we've already mentioned as well, but then also then Jonah Williams, their right tackle. Those are some of the main ones. Other guys, Josh Tupou is another defensive tackle here. Chidobe Owazi, I apologize, I'm mispronouncing that name. He is a cornerback for them. So those are just some of the top names, and I mentioned the cornerback as well, just because it is a younger secondary, so they're trying to get a little bit better in there. So losing some depth, but in general, though, to me, Ryan, the main thing that they need to get re-signed here it is going to be the receivers. So I think that's what really
yeah,
keeps this whole team dynamic is having the great multiple options that they can go to outside of just Jamar Chase. And potentially as well, if they want to move on from Irv Smith or Drew Sample, I think they could do that, and then draft a young tight end in this class, maybe in the second round. I don't think Brock Bowers is going to fall to them, but maybe they could trade up into the top 10 or just outside the top 10 if he does fall. Because imagine Brock Bowers
yeah.
on this team. So when you see this, what are some of your thoughts overall on the 2024 offseason for the
Yeah,
Bengals?
I mean, so for me, bringing back T. Higgins, I think is going to be a big thing for this team. That there's going to be a lot of interest in him. I would not be surprised if they tag him. I do believe Jonah Williams wants out of Cincinnati. Just with the
Mm-hmm.
Orlando Browns signing, Jonah Williams was playing, or I think he came into the league as a left tackle, and then now he was kicked over to right tackle, and then was even competing for snaps over there, and was just a little frustrated with the organization as a whole. So I do believe that he is a free agent candidate, or is a free agent candidate that is likely to leave. DJ Reader, I believe, is getting up there in age, so solidifying that defensive interior is going to be something to watch. And these tight ends, while they're good, aren't anything spectacular. Uh, and so I definitely think that they could go after a tight end. I also think they need to continue to add depth in the secondary. The loss of Jesse Bates was really big. I could see them going after a guy like Cameron Kitchens early in the first round of the draft. I think that's actually probably the earliest I would see him going, just because the safety position isn't as valuable as a true corner. But this is a weaker secondary class, and I think there's a few safeties at the top that could really make an impact on some teams. And the loss of Jesse Bates made them have to adjust a little bit of their defensive scheme, which is why I think we saw such a big drop off in the running game. They really like to play single high and allow Jesse Bates to be this speedy roamer there. And I just think getting a guy like Cameron Kitchens, he can really fly all around the field and would allow them to kind of go back to the defensive schemes that they were running from a few years ago. So it'll be interesting here what they decide to do. As long as Joe Burrow is there and healthy, they'll be a Super Bowl contender. Um, and I really like what they have going on. So, oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can agree with that. Where it's like as long as Joe Burrow's there, just feel like this team's always in contention. And I think one of the things too is they can re-sign T. Higgins, and they can bolster up the offensive line, whether if it's keeping Jonah Williams or if it is getting a guy in the first round that can come in and play, just slowly keep improving. I feel like they have the pieces there, even from
Yeah.
Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard and the DJ Reader if they want to re-sign him. I know he had a major injury, so we'll have to see how that works. They got a good linebacking core with Jermaine Pratt leading the way. A young secondary, which I think is improving with DJ Turner, Daxton Hill also, and so I feel like the pieces are there. We'll just they just need to maintain this. Well, I don't want to say maintain this momentum. They want to improve all the momentum that they had started to develop under Jake Browning in the second half of that season. Unfortunately, it was just not enough to make the playoffs. So
Yeah.
Bengals aren't going anywhere, and so just an unfortunate year, just kind of all around for the entire team.
Yeah, yeah, and franchises have that year, especially the ones at the top. I mean, even Kansas City, I think, is having somewhat of a down year, especially in terms of their standards. So let's go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the Bengals 2023 season and what do you expect them to do in going into the 2024 offseason. Let us know down below, and on that, we will see you guys.